right, good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and we'll get started. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Regular Board of Trustees meeting of August 12th, 2024. Welcome back, everyone. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our participants for this evening, and starting at my far right is Ms. Marianne Southwick, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hawker, Superintendent. To my left is Ms. Leslie Bierke, Vice Chair, Ms. Allie Anderton, Board Member, Mr. Jimmy McAndrew, Board Member. I'm Rebecca Smith, Board Chair, and Trustee Tenbrink will not be with us this evening. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of the meeting. Please sign up to speak on the sheet provided at the back entrance. Comments may also be submitted to the board via email at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing through our clerk. Thanks. Tonight, we have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, tonight's agenda then is before us. We're going to start with some board recognitions this evening, and first up is a celebration of our AP exams.
So, recently the Coeur d'Alene School District celebrated 60 high school students who earned at least one perfect score on their advanced placement AP exams in the 23-24 academic year. These exceptional students mastered challenging subjects from calculus to literature, biology to history with dedication and resilience. The AP program, known for its college-level rigor, is offered at Coeur d'Alene and Lake City high schools. A perfect score on an AP exam is a 5. In the 23-24 academic year, 17% of all students in the district who took the AP exam earned a perfect score, and 72% earned a score of 3 or higher. 11 students received 2 perfect scores, 7 received 3 perfect scores, 3 received 4 perfect scores, and 4 earned 5 perfect scores. So that's quite an accomplishment.
Also up tonight, we're going to celebrate a transportation award.
On July 23rd, the Idaho Department of Education's Student Transportation Director, Allie Stolzman, awarded Gary Day from the Coeur d'Alene Public Schools Transportation Department with the 23-24 Service Award for his contributions to the community, the work environment and his coworkers. His efforts are invaluable. As noted in conversations with his work peers and beyond, Gary had worked for the school district as a teacher prior to becoming a school bus driver for the Coeur d'Alene Public Schools in October of 22. Congratulations, Gary. We're honored to have you as part of our team.
Gary has received his award already, and we're just here to celebrate that tonight. Well done. Is there any other student recognitions tonight, Dr. Hawker?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Terrific. We'll go ahead and we'll move into public comment this evening, and we have a few folks that have signed up for public comment. I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it's not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting of the board to conduct district business. We do allow public comment period for district-related items, limited to no more than 45 minutes total, and those wishing to address the board may have 3 minutes. At the end, at the designated time, we'll welcome you to the podium. Please state your name and your city of residence. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comment. If you have handouts, you can give them to our clerk. We'll give them to us on your behalf. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. This evening, would like to welcome up Lori Watkins. Lori, there might be a button there. Oh, it's already on for you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you
I
go.
can hear that. Hello, my name is Lori Watkins. Atkins, and I live here in Coeur d'Alene. I previously was in front of this school board, employed as a school bus driver for Coeur d'Alene School District. That was on February the 12th. On the 13th, after meeting and asking about changes in the benefits and the hours and all this, and employees having dock pay when they didn't have 30 hours a week as opposed to the 20 that's stated. On the 13th, I was asked to come into Donda's office, had a meeting with her and the secretary, and then I was taken to the district office where I was told that it did not look good to be presenting to the public that employees' pay is getting docked, and they did not announce the change in the benefits because people have a tendency not to listen when certain items don't, pertain to them. On the 14th of February, Donda and Chelsea, the trainer, instructed me not to be passing other buses in the bus loading zone. I did drive a special needs route, and when I was loaded, typically before that, I would load my students and go, being the route goes all over town, while the Gen Ed buses was load. But I was instructed the day after that this was not protocol, don't be doing it. On February 22nd, I was written up because of an inappropriate conversation that happened with one of my students on the bus. He's transgender and was having some issues getting along, and so my bus aide and we did have a conversation with that student. The parents were upset about this and reported it to Donda. My aide and I were both written up, and I was told to stay in my lane, pay more attention to the driving, less to the students. On the 14th of March, I was texting on my phone, and I was suspended that afternoon. I was told to come back for the driver meeting the following morning, and when I went in, I was called into the office by Donda and told to go home until further notice. And then I was called later that night to meet at the district office on Monday morning, where I was fired. I was a driver for Coeur d'Alene School District for nearly 9 years, and I was fired. No write-up, no citation. There was no accident. There was nothing, but I did have my phone out, and I'm not justifying that this was okay. It is a safety issue, but I was terminated. I know that there is a trainer that has a DUI that is still employed.
Lori, you'll need to wrap it up because
Yes.
that's 3 minutes. So.
And I have had no citations or accidents. There's other drivers that have had bus-related accidents, and they are still driving. I did receive, I got employment with the
Lori, if you wanna bring
Post
it to
Falls
a
School
close,
District,
that'd be
and then
great.
Coeur
Thanks.
d'Alene did not, would not transport or allow them access to my my training records. And just wanted the public
Thank
to
you.
know that transgender male students are allowed to use the girls' bathrooms
And
and
Lori,
locker
that's
rooms.
3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay,
so much.
thank you.
All right,
I
thank
hope
you.
that you address this
All right,
properly,
thank you.
as I think the public should know.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Next up, we have Jeanette Lassiter.
Is it on? Okay. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hucker. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here tonight to just briefly talk and mention the collaborative and supportive efforts that HREI makes with the school district, within and around the school district. It was brought to my attention at the last meeting that I came in late and someone had made public comment and made reference to HREI. And I wasn't in the building when that occurred, but I was it was mentioned to me by an audience member. And so I just thought I'd take this time to mention, I went back and reviewed the video and just mention the reasons that we are on campus sometimes, our staff or our volunteers, and just wanted to clarify what that is. It's been a great privilege for me to serve in the district. As far back as Hazel Bauman, I had a student that went through here, and I currently have a student enrolled in the school district. So I've served on several district committees. I know many of the employees within our schools, and I serve along with the SROs and a couple other people when it comes to our students that are on diversion. HREI does about 15,000 hours of community service supervision, and 40% of those are students in the Coeur d'Alene School District. And so they come to us to serve time in our building and do community service, and oftentimes we're called to the school to sign off on their paperwork while a diversion person or a SRO is present in the building. Oftentimes they don't even get past the front door because the paperwork's sitting at the front desk. So, and we have volunteers, social work interns that also have participated in the schools. All of these people that are volunteers that work with HREI are vetted through the Raptor system, and they're completely supervised by not only an HREI person, but also by a district employee if there is a recommendation for that intern to participate in the schools in any way. We also have a relationship with our students of poverty, and we work to facilitate sometimes placement of resources or even housing. HREI serves on the Strengthening Families Committee and is also part of the Children's Village Family Assessment Center. And so there's a lot of collaboration within all of that where we participate. And so there's a little bit of overlapping programming that takes place. And so I hope that gives just a little bit of eye-opening as to why we might be present on the schools. We've been a collaborative partner for over 10 years. I've been at HREI for 8.5, 6 as the executive director. And so we've had a great history of serving our students in many capacities. So,
Terrific. That's 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thanks. Thanks so much. Oh, whoops. Ouch. All right. All right. Dr. Hawker, superintendent report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith and trustees. I did want to follow up on a couple brief items here, and then we'll move on into item B. Last month, during public comment as well, Mr. Mark Price addressed the board, and he had stated a couple of things that I wanted to do some follow-up with. First, he had shared that the district was spending, $400 to $500 per night on hotel rooms, and obviously that was concerning to me. I wanted to do some work on that. I know how cost-conscious I am. I know how cost-conscious you all are as you may travel to conference. So I asked our team to do a little research for me, and I just wanted to share out some of that data. Last year, there were 711 rooms that were rented throughout the school year. That includes athletics and conferences, board trainings. You can imagine all the different kinds of things. The average rate on those 711 rooms was $181.42. There was one room of the 711 that was $409, and that was rented by one of our high schools. And there was one room for $400. It was a house through a VRBO that held 5 people, so creating an $80 average. Just wanted to share out with the board that the average hotel expense that the folks throughout the district are typically spending is about $181. The second item also that Mr. Price mentioned was that he felt like we had been hiring a whole lot of people, specifically since I have been your superintendent. I just wanted to share out in the last year, not taking into account where we sit today, where we know we're obviously less today as well, but just wanted to share out that in May of 2023, we had 698 certified staff, and May of 2024, we had 671, so 27 less staff. and that's the certified staff. And classified staff, we had May of 2023, we had 371, and May a year later of 24, we had 380, so up 9. So overall, savings down 18 staff in this last year, and those classified employees where we were up 9, as you recall, really are directly attributed to our special ed paraprofessionals that we hired last year due to our increasing SPED population. So I obviously just wanted to share out with you because I think it's very important for our community to also understand what we're trying to accomplish here with our budget scenarios here in the district, and that was my 2 main items I wanted to just update the board on. And obviously under superintendent report, the next item is specifically our property tax and levy rates. And we do have a great presentation prepared by Eric Herringer for that, if that's okay. And we can roll to there. We good? All right, thanks. Eric.
I was just going to say, so we got 711 rooms. I would presume like the bulk of those are athletics, so you probably have double and triple occupancy as well. So I know that 183 or 181.42 is going to be the headline number, but probably boil it down to.
Thank you. That's a good catch. Yes, could be more. Obviously, there could be double to quadruple. I think mostly double. Is that right, Trent? Do we mostly do doubles in the rooms? Yeah. So good catch. Thanks, Trustee McAndrew. All right, Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Hawker. Members of the board, my name is Eric. I've come to this meeting, I think, once a year and go over the various types of property tax levies that the school district can have and does have, just to help, remind you what's possible and what currently exists. Am I on, or do I need to? I'm on? Okay. Where's the red light? It sounds like I'm on. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Then how do I cycle through?
Yeah, so you'll just scroll.
Oh, down here? Okay. This guy? Or can I just?
Yeah, you're just gonna have to scroll.
Okay. Okay. So this slide, you should have this electronically. There's 3 types of voted levies for schools in Idaho. And reading left to right, you typically start with the bond, because most of the time when there's an election, I feel like there's a presumption that when there's an election for school funding, it's a bond. It's called a bond. But it's not always a bond. A bond is a specific thing that is, when it's voted, it authorizes 2 things. One, the school district to incur debt, borrow money to build a project, and then levy property tax to pay it back. So under the Idaho Constitution, to borrow money and repay it over a period beyond 1 year requires a 2/3 supermajority, regardless of whether you have the money to pay it back. But with the bond, you also get the ability to levy a property tax to pay it back, so that that money to pay it back doesn't compete with your operating money. 2/3 supermajority requires, that's what it requires, and then you can have the bond repayment term for up to 30 years. If you look on the far right-hand side is a supplemental levy. That's something the district is familiar with more recently, having run a supplemental levy. That money is used to support the general fund. There's really no limitations on what you can spend the money on other than what the voters authorize. And you have to outline in your ballot title what you plan to spend the money on. But that's operating money. It goes into the general fund, helps support salaries and programs and things that is not funded by the state. It's a simple majority to pass. It's authorized for up to 2 years. It's not debt. You don't borrow the money and get it up front. You get the property taxes are levied. The county collects those property taxes and then passes those over to the district. You get basically, you get payments throughout the year, but you get them in 2 big chunks. One at the end of January, first part of February is the biggest chunk, roughly 58%, if you will, of the property taxes for the year. You'll see that, and then the balance will come in July, which is actually after the end of your fiscal year. So you sort of have, that's money is associated with your fiscal year that's already ended. So you have to have enough fund balance to cash flow the receipts of those later payments. And then the plant levy is kind of the in-between thing that it looks like a supplemental levy because it's money that gets levied and then by the county and then it's, paid over to the school district. It's not debt, but it's used for capital projects. So, the bonds for capital projects, supplementals for operating, and the plant levy is also for capital projects, but typically it's for major maintenance and upkeep and repair. And so it's the kind of thing that districts typically use to take care of the things they have. There was a period of time in 20 plus, probably about 20 years ago where the district had plant levies, and you currently don't have one, although you'll see on the next slide, there was an attempt with a couple elections. This is the election history for those three types of levies going back to 2011. There's a longer history than 2011, but that's the year the state consolidated the election dates, and so it's a lot easier to get the data because it's all in one place. But your supplemental levies have been approved every couple years. That's the 2-year cycle. In 2023, as you know, in March, it didn't pass. That was it was an increase from 20 million to 25 million, and it was, instead of being a 2-year levy, it was a indefinite levy. It was a permanent supplemental. That is one thing that the district can do, and I didn't have the slide in here about the permanent supplemental levy, but basically if you have up to 7 consecutive years where the supplemental levy has been approved and is more than 20% of your general fund budget, then you're allowed to request voter approval for a permanent, and that's you qualified to request the permanent. But that didn't happen. There's a handful of school districts that have permanent supplemental levies. Sandpoint's one of them, Moscow, Boise School District, Blaine County School District, and maybe a few others. The one thing I want to point out is your supplemental levy was approved in May of 23, and it's for 2 years, so that's for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25. So you have that supplemental 25 million authorized going into this fiscal year, but it's the last fiscal year of the authorization. And I know it's on your agenda to consider an election to renew that. So I'll touch on that in a second. Feel free to ask questions as I go through. Some of you have heard this before. So based on that, here's the levies that you have, that you had for fiscal year 24. There's that $25 million supplemental levy, and remember that was a $5 million increase from the prior year. But the bond levy went down, and the bond levy went down a lot, and you'll see how much it went down on the next slide because of the property tax relief that the state passed, and this specifically was House Bill 292. And they created this thing called the School Facilities Fund. Really, sounds like it was for facilities, but it really, for the most part, is property tax relief that maybe a handful of districts get money for facilities, but most districts are using that money, are required to use that money for property tax relief, and that's the case for the district. That your levy was more like $4 million-ish, but you got $3.7 million in those school facilities funds, and that has to first be applied against your bond levy. So you reduce your bond levy. You still got the money you needed to pay your bond. It's just that most of it came from the state. So 25.4 million is your total. 95 cent per thousand tax rate. That's also known as $95 per 100,000. It's another way to say that. This slide looks at just historically. The top piece of data is the total dollar amount of the levies. So that the 25.4 million you see there. Come on, come back here. That should match up with that last bar on the top chart, the 25.4 million. It's a little bit more than it was the prior year. What was that, a couple 100,000? You remember the supplemental went up 5 million, but the bond went down a lot, and net, not a big difference in terms of the total dollar amount. When you look at the tax rate, so the tax rate per thousand actually went down a little bit from 96 cents to 95 cents. And that's because of the market value growth. You have a dollar amount divided into your market value, and if the market value increases more than your dollar amount, then your tax rate's going to go down. But you can see the tax rate for the district has declined substantially in the last 10 years. It's been cut, by more than half. And a lot of, that's for two primary reasons. One, market value growth, we've got a bigger tax base. Two, the state's provided some property tax relief. Okay. Talked about market value. This is just real quick. When I look at your market value, because all your voted levies, you get the benefit of the urban renewal area. So you kind of, we don't have to peel out the value in the urban renewal areas. And so what you're looking at there is your tax base, for the kind of your real tax base for the purpose of paying the bonds and the supplemental. And it really didn't go up much last year. You saw that huge increase from 22 to 23, where there's a big increase, and that's not just new construction, that's the revalue of existing property. But you saw a balancing out, a leveling off, if you will, from 23 to 24. We won't know we're about to find out within the next month what the market value of the district is for the next tax cycle, but we don't know it today. The county's got preliminary numbers, but they're not official until the tax commission gets done with them. So we don't, when we look at tax rates and calculate them about this next election, we're going to use what we know and what's official, and that's the most recent year you're seeing there, the 2024.
As someone that watches that, any thoughts for us or advisement on that? That's unofficial, of course.
About the increase or decrease? Honestly, I don't. There's been a whole lot of other
There's
numbers
lots
that are
going on.
flying around that
Yeah.
I've kind of had to keep my focus
Pull
on.
back.
So.
Okay. Just curious. Thanks.
My sense is that things have remained pretty level in terms of the existing property. But you're going to see, there's been a lot of new construction.
Mhm.
I mean, I drove around today, and
Right.
I can see it.
Yeah.
So, there should be some mild increase, I would think.
Okay. Thanks.
One thing I like to, districts are interested in is where you stack up and, among your neighbors. So this is Region 1. You've got tax rate as low as 62 cents per thousand for Kootenai, 274. You're in kind of the lower half at 95 cents, just above Avery there, but below Boundary. And you've got some pretty high tax rates at the far end over in Shoshone County. The statewide rate is about $1.33. So you're, not only are you on the lower side in District 1, but you're also below the statewide average in terms of tax rate. It's helpful to have a big tax base.
How does this compare with some of our comps on the enrollment side?
$1 per kid kind of thing.
Okay.
Boy, I used to keep that data, and you actually look pretty, on the higher end of that.
Okay.
I would say that today that's probably down because the dollar amounts have leveled off. I know your enrollment's down a little bit too, but I think in a lot of areas the levy amount's up a little bit. So yeah, I don't have that.
Sure.
The reason I don't have that, and the reason I don't have an insight on your market value, is because I've been really paying attention to the state's been doing with these various legislation around school facilities and property tax relief. And I'm joking, but I have, that's where I've been spending a lot of my time, is just trying to understand how these things are impacting school districts throughout the state. And so I think it's important because there's a lot of confusion around these two things: the House Bill 292, which was the 2023 legislative session, and then House Bill 521. They both created programs for school facilities. So, people think, well, it's the same thing, and well, what's the difference? And you really have to separate it out. The House Bill 292 is basically state funding to offset property tax levies of school districts. And initially it was to offset your bond levy, and then once the bond levy was zero, or if you didn't have one, it would offset your supplemental levy. And then if you were zero on both of those, and there was money left over, then it would go into a school facilities fund, and you could actually use it to repair a roof. House Bill 521 added to that plant levies. So now plant levies are part of that waterfall. So any money that's coming in through the school facilities funds, SFF, I call it the House Bill 292 bucket. Those monies go through that waterfall bond against the levies until the levies are zero. And then if there's any money left over, you can use it for stuff, building stuff, repairing stuff. That school facilities money is received by the district, not the county. Sometimes property tax relief money goes directly to the county and they do all the math. In this case, the money comes to the district, and then you say, okay, well, we need, next year we need $2 million for our bond. How much did we get in this school facilities fund? Well, you're probably going to get more than $2 million. So whatever's left over will go against your supplemental. I'll show you what that could look like. But we don't know what that number is yet. And that number is supposed to come to you by the end of August. And then once you get it, you'll adjust your L2, which is the document you submit to the county with your property tax levies. Okay. So House Bill 521, it did some things with the school facilities funds. It did some things with what was approved the prior year, the House Bill 292 money. And it also created a new program. And I'll talk about the new program on the next slide. What I'm talking about on this slide is 521 got rid of the school bond levy equalization program, which is a subsidy program that the state provided to help support the repayment of bonds. And they took that money that was going into that program and then repurposed it to add it to the school facilities funds, because the point being the school facilities funds property tax relief, that's what the new property tax relief regime is going to be. And we got this waterfall set up, and the first thing in the waterfall is bonds. So if we put the bond levy equalization money into there, it'll be fine. You weren't really receiving much in terms of bond levy equalization. You only got $6,000 last year, but you got $3.7 million in school facilities funds last year. The estimate initially was that the school facilities funds could potentially double because of the increase in funding that was provided by 521. It's not looking like it'll double because some of it relies on how much property tax was collected, how much general fund carryover there is, and those numbers aren't totally known yet either, which is why we don't know how much you're getting in that program yet, even though it's the middle of August. So the initial estimate was you get about $7 million. So that's what I'm using in my projections, even though I know that it's probably going to be less, but we got to start somewhere. And we'll know all this stuff before we certify. This House Bill 521 also got rid of the bond levy. It changed the way you certify your bond levy. And really, it's basically you can get up to a 20% reserve fund balance in your bond fund. It used to be you could have basically a year's worth of payment in your bond fund as reserve. But now they're capping it. It can only be a 20% carryover. So, and that's fine. I don't think that's going to impact the district a whole lot, either way, because you're basically going forward just levying for what you need, and you have whatever your fund balance will stay at 20%, and then you'll just use the balance to make payments, and whatever you don't need or whatever again, you'll levy what you need, but you're going to get school facilities funds that are going to take your bond to zero. So you're basically, I'd say, going forward, assuming that this program continues to exist, you're not going to have a bond levy. Yeah. It's going to be zero. Money's going to come from the state. And importantly, for the discussion you're having about the election for the supplemental, House Bill 521 got rid of the August election date. House Bill 292, the year before, got rid of the March election date. So now you only have two election dates. You have May and November. And when you think about your supplemental, and I know you know this because you're considering it tonight, you have two elections to pass that before it needs to be certified. So if the certification for the levies are due in September, you are authorized this September to certify your $25 million. But if you want to certify next September, there's two elections between now and then. So it's either November or May. And a lot of districts are looking at that saying, oh, we better run it in November to be safe. Because if, you wait till May and it doesn't pass, then it's not, you got to go a year without it. Okay? Sounds like you've heard some of this before, I think. So House Bill 521 also created the School Modernization Facilities Fund, and this is the one that's the new money. This is the $125 million new distribution from the sales tax of the state that can be used to leverage a bond issue, and so the districts can get a lump sum payment of, I don't know what I don't have it written down what your estimate of your lump sum payment is for Coeur d'Alene. It's $36 million. But that $36 million comes by the way of your portion of the $125 million, how much that can bond, how much you can borrow, how much of the bond you're going to get. There could be up to $1 billion that the state will issue, and then the state will use the $125 million a year for 10 years to pay back that bond issue. They'll get all the money up front, so they can be sent out as grants to the school districts. So school districts have a choice. They can take the money in a lump sum up front, which will be funded by that bond of the state, or you can take it in annualized distributions, but if you take it in annualized distributions, it's got to go through the 292 waterfall, right? So if you say, okay, well, we just want our chunk of the 125 million each year for the next 10 years, then that's going to just go to property tax relief and doesn't give you any new money to, repair, replace, update your buildings. You guys already know that too, I can tell. Most districts are choosing to take the money up front. I know there's probably 3 or 4 that are going to do annualized distributions, and most of them don't have levies, which is why, so then the money goes into a fund that they can use. The other thing that, frustrates a lot of school leaders, and it frustrates me too, is that the money that is kind of going into this increase in the school facilities funds is coming from bond levy equalization, and it's also coming from the lottery distribution that provides maintenance match. And that's money that school districts used for its, your ongoing maintenance needs, which still exist. But now the funding for that isn't there, and it went over here into these school facilities funds or the modernization, but you can't use those monies for that thing that maintenance and salaries and things you're using the maintenance match for. So you still have the need, but you don't have the funding source. And that I know is an issue, and I don't have an answer for you because, I didn't draft the legislation. However, I do think that it was an unintended consequence, and I think it will be considered at the next session to try to figure that out. Okay. I'm going to real quick on your bonds. I mentioned before that unlikely you'll have a bond levy going forward. And part of the reason I say that is because if you look, these are your bond payments going forward. In 2024, it was about $4 million-ish. Actually, next year it drops pretty substantially because you actually paid off a little bit of the Series 2012B bond already. You called those bonds, so there's like a little bit of a carve out there. But then, the payments go back up to, 4.8 million-ish. And I suspect that your school facilities fund money, the 292 money, will be more than those bond payments. And you only have, 7 years left on your bond before it's all paid off. The one thing that, may be up for consideration down the line with regard to your bonds is whether you refinance them. We always look at, no one's asking me, should we refinance bonds right now? Because everyone knows interest rates are high. But when interest rates do go low, which inevitably they do go through cycles, there will be an opportunity to think about refinancing those bonds. Although, we're getting pretty close to the payoff, so there may not be a lot of savings, but if there are, we'll be keeping track of that and letting you know. Okay. So, to help think about next year, a lot of numbers on this page, but what I'm trying to do is show what, based on the school facilities funds, if that comes in at that 7 million number that was initially estimated. So fiscal '24, that first row of data is the actual. You had roughly $4 million bond payment. You got 3.7 million between bond levy equalization and school facilities. So you had a small little bond levy of 258,000, full 25 million on the supplemental. And so that was your, the amount you collected for the voted levies. I don't have the tort levy in here just because it's not a voted levy, and the school facilities fund doesn't go against it. But then in fiscal '25, the bond goes to 2 million, so it goes down. If you get 7 million, that'll cover the bond, and then the balance, roughly 5 million, will go against your supplemental. So your supplemental is 25, you got 5 million going against that, you'll levy 20, you'll use the 5 million from the state, and you'll get your 25 million, but 20 million of it's coming from property tax, 5 million from the state. Then if you keep it at 25 million, if you renew it at 25 million, what does it look like in 26 and 27? And that's what's illustrated there. A little bit more of that 7 million is going against the bond, so a little less is going against the supplemental, and so you might see a little bit, a drop in your levy in 25 and then an uptick in 26 and 27. However, that could be offset by increased money going into school facilities fund, because school facilities funds, its ongoing funding source is sales tax. It's a percentage of sales tax. So if the sales tax continues to grow, which unless we're in a recession, it should grow, you'll see more money coming through school facilities funds. If we do go into a recession, that it's likely your sales tax will decline, and so the amount available will go down. So also true. So we'll see. In terms of what it means for your property tax levies, that's at raft at the bottom. You're at $94 roughly per thousand, and this last year probably dropped, and this assumes no growth in your market value. Same market value as last year, so this is apples to apples with like old market value. It dropped to $74, and then it could potentially go back up to $85. It's still going to be lower ongoing than what it looks like today, with the caveats that that school facilities money comes in where we expect it to, and that your market value doesn't go down. If your market value goes up, those numbers should be lower. If your market value goes down, they could be higher. But all in all, I think this is if I'm a taxpayer, I look at this and I say, well, if my taxes go up, it's not because of the school district, right? Overall, the dollar amounts you're collecting are pretty consistent. If it's the other taxing entities that you're not the only one that's levying property tax. The city, the county, fire district, cemetery district also levies taxes. Any questions so far?
Is there a, oh, never mind, you might be there.
Okay, so this is taking a look at what you're considering, I think, later with the supplemental election. We ran two scenarios, 25 million and 25 million 750, so an additional 750,000. We don't have any offsetting money from House Bill 292, so that makes the calculations pretty simple. The required ballot disclosures about the cost per 100,000, we have to calculate the cost per 100,000 and include that on the ballot. So when you say, hey, voters, consider authorizing another 25 million, you need to disclose what you estimate the cost per 100,000 will be based on current conditions. Current conditions are, the market value we know today. And by the time this needs to go to the county clerk for the ballots to be drafted, we're not going to have an official market value. We might. The timing's really weird, but it's the tax commission that has to sort of validate the final number. The county has all its numbers, but the tax commission keeps track of the operating property value. So that's the one piece that we don't have to have a new number. So we use the old number. And so 25 million is expiring. If you renew 25 million, there's no change, right? It's $93 is what it costs currently. What it costs in fiscal 25, we don't know yet. If the market value goes up, it'll be less, but we don't know yet. But if based on if you renew it for fiscal 26 beginning, We're just showing that it's no change because we're using the same market value, which makes sense. I mean, it's 25 million, market value's the same, math's the same. If you increase it to 25,750,000, that additional 750,000 costs $3 per 100,000. That's the increase in the tax rate. So not a substantial difference in tax rate for those additional dollars, but it is an increase. That's the last slide. So,
So say market values go down 5% across the board. Can you just basically do the inverse with that on the increase to that levy rate?
right.
I mean, pretty close.
Yep. Yep. There's just
Say that again, could you?
So if values went down by 5%, you'd be looking at a levy rate that would go up approximately 5%.
yep.
Okay.
Just trying to be conscientious of what a lot of people have thought of a semi-frothy market.
I think one thing to point out there is if the market went down 5%, you know, it would be you'd assume that the value of your property went. So that's the tricky thing is
'Cause you got
know,
the new
it's
construction
all,
coming in
right,
as
it all depends on like how your property performs relative to the average.
Yeah.
And if your increase is outpacing the average, your taxes are going up. If your increase is lower, if your percentage increase in your value is lower than the average, your taxes are probably going down. So there's just there's shifts between commercial and there's lots going on, you know, that it makes it hard to make any definitive statement about, you know, will your taxes, what was going to happen to you, an individual taxpayer's taxes is going to be dependent on a lot of other things beyond just the tax rate.
I think on average, we've seen our assessments come down just this last year after going through the roof. So it's taken into consideration a bunch of it already, but it's just good to have that planning for worst case scenario so you can kind of speak to it.
Just to re-clarify, we are supposed to know by the end of August about those supplemental dollars. I mean, that's the deadline. I can't remember the
School
deadline.
facilities funds.
Yeah, the school
Yep.
facilities funds. So end of August is when we're supposed to
You're supposed to receive it.
receive it.
Yeah.
Right. And that is, I'm almost looking at Shannon here, like too. That is gonna, I know that there's just questions about that. And so could that be pushed? I mean, at this point, or are they committed to making sure that that happens?
I guess anything's possible. I mean, I know, I don't know if it's not a big secret that the state's struggled with its accounting system. So
Right.
that's what's causing some of the delays. Because that money needs to be identified and delivered before districts submit their L2s, and there's a pretty significant, serious deadline on the L2s in terms of the process the counties use, it would be I would think there'd be some emergency declarations about what needs to happen.
Okay.
It wouldn't be pretty. I don't think anything's possible, but
So what would a scenario
I would
look
imagine. I think that there would be, you know, everyone take a breather and, you know, let's figure this out and let's make sure that, you know, the money's it's got to get there. The money's there, right? It's just figuring out how much of it is there to distribute.
So let's just say worst case scenario, it's not figured out it's November. What is the worst, like what comes into play in that case? You're just delaying everything until?
So, I mean, at some point, you have to submit those L2s. And so I'm just kind of speculating, right? I'm speculating that if the state doesn't have the money figured out yet to the dollar amount, then they're going to provide guidance about whether estimate it on your L2 and submit it or ask for an extension and, you know, make sure the counties are comfortable with that. You know, there's a period of time where, you know, school districts can get extensions, but it's certainly not till November because, you know, the tax bills have to go out in November. So, push comes to shove, it's going to have to be figured out by then. And maybe it's done on estimates, you know. In which case, if it's done on estimates, then I would go ultra conservative on everything I just showed you, right? Yeah. I just don't see it getting that bad.
All right, any further questions for right now, trustees? Eric, thank you for all your work. Thanks for being here tonight.
You bet.
Really appreciate it. Really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to go ahead and move in then to our assessment update. And yeah, Dr. Nelson, thank you. Welcome.
Absolutely, welcome. Well, we are around 20 days until the start of classes, and as we start looking at what we will be challenged to do this next school year, we are finalizing our assessment updates this year for you from the last school year. Mrs. Summers is sad that she wouldn't be able to be here this evening, but hopefully I can represent what we're talking about well. I do want to reiterate to you, as you already saw, we had excellent advanced placement results, commonly referred to as AP. If you are unaware as to what advanced placement does, here's a little bit of detail for you, but ultimately, the AP program is authorized by the College Board. The College Board is an intermediary between our high schools and colleges and universities throughout the United States. And the advanced placement program ultimately says, here are collegiate level courses which you can take, which would equate to first year work. We had about 600 students this last year take an AP course, and a majority of them took the coordinating exam. Those exams are scored on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 means that the student is unqualified to meet the standards. 3 means that they are qualified to meet the standards, and usually a 3 is about where colleges and universities will accept the course grade for credit. And 5 is extremely well qualified. As we expressed a little bit early today, the first thing is we need to get kids in courses. And so I'm pleased to share with you also at Coeur d'Alene High School, at Lake City High School, as well as in the entire district, we had more students taking AP courses than the last 4 previous years. This last year, 605 total seats were taken. And again, you can see increases over year from that. So that's a good sign that students feel confident in the coursework that we're offering. And since a majority of those students took the corresponding exam, that's also a very good sign to meaning that they felt confident going in and showing what they could do.
Really quick.
Go ahead.
Is there anything to these odd number years?
It is a unique thing, but
Okay.
not that I have seen.
Curious.
As you shared, we had 110 perfect scores throughout the entire district. 17% of all of the exams taken, the students received a perfect score on their assessment. Those 110 scores were generated by 60 students. We had 4 students get 5 perfect scores, meaning that every exam that they took, all 5 of them, they were ranked in the top 10% of the entire nation. Many of those students have already graduated. We have 1 student who is an incoming senior at Lake City High School. It's an extraordinary accomplishment. Additionally, we had 3 students get 4 5s, 7 students get 3, 11 students get 2, and 60 students had 1 perfect score. 72% of all students who took the exam received collegiate value for that exam. Now, it is important to say that each college and university does have a different AP policy. They are allowed to say what they will offer, what they will accept. So we do cautiously remind our students to check with their colleges and universities and make sure that what they're looking to matriculate to is accepted and what the value is of that. But those are wonderful things to happen. Mrs. Anderson?
Right quick, can you tell us how that compares percentage-wise to last year? Or the
In terms of the number of students, we had 68% of students achieve 68% of all students achieve a 3 or higher last year. So this year we had more students achieving a 3 or higher. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Continuing the tradition that we have, we recognize that if we are going to be successful and we are going to continually grow the program, we need to make sure that the academic work in our classrooms goes beyond the classroom walls. So for the 5th year, we had teachers, we had school board trustees, we had administrators at both of our high schools as well as the district level go personally to these students' homes and plant these 5 signs throughout the district. In fact, I passed 2 of them on my way from my home here to the evening, or to the board meeting this evening. It's a wonderful sign of appreciation and admiration for what our students are doing. So we'll hopefully continue to do that, and we also thank the Coeur d'Alene Press, who gave us a little shout out as well for all of this work recently. Can I answer any additional questions for you on AP?
And you don't have to get me this today, but I would be really curious to know what subjects the kids are, what percentage of kids are doing English AP, math AP, and whatever other subject areas. So who's taking the classes and what percentage of those kids are passing in those subject areas?
So we had
That would-
20 different courses this last year. To reiterate, you're looking for a demographic
Yeah,
for,
that'd be great.
from those
Maybe-
enrollments?
Yeah, something a little more specific. I mean, these are good numbers, but just to kind of dig in a little bit more,
Sure.
I like to really sift through that data.
I will provide you something, and if there's any additional question, you can certainly respond back. I'd be
Wonderful.
more than glad
Thank
to
you.
help you out. Any additional questions regarding our excellent AP scorers? You get to see me again next month because we are going to be talking about our continuous improvement plan. This is our statewide mandated goals for the year. And this last year, you may remember, we were very specific that we wanted to see 5% increase in a majority of the metrics that we have. In your board notes this last Friday, I did provide a detail of all of the metrics that we had, but I wanted to provide a top-level view for you this evening. September 12th, I think, is our board meeting. Is that right? 10th? 9th? Whenever we meet next again, sometime in September, we will provide next year's goals for your review and hopefully be able to post them on our website before October 1st, which is the statewide deadline. The state is very specific about what they would like to see, and in fact, they provide us a template. We certainly are not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but they're looking for specifically growth and performance in both literacy and numeracy. This meets not only many of the statewide targets as identified by the legislatures, the State Board of Education, and the State Department of Education, but also includes how our students are growing after their time here in our district. So we'll include a majority of our college and career advising and metrics, monitoring metrics as well as part of that. That is an annual report or a goal sheet that is posted at our district website using that template. Now, if we take a few moments to look back at 23-24, how did we do? On the 2024 plan, we provided or looked for a 5% growth goal across the board. And we did see movement in nearly all of those areas as we presented to you over the past several months. Now, some of our areas did not receive the 5% growth goal. However, almost all of those metrics year over year were up. And that's why you see a medium along the way. We didn't necessarily see the 5%, but that is a very good growth indicator that what we are doing in terms of intervention and Tier 1 instruction, focusing on the needs of students, is working. Where we also saw the greatest trajectory increase was actually in growth. We had more students who may have not been able to meet grade level standards in the past get closer to meeting those grade level standards. So if we said the average student's growth was here, we actually saw a majority of students get a higher percentage of growth in a shorter amount of time. And again, that's probably akin to the work of our interventionists, our intervention time that we've instituted at 2 schools as a pilot last year, and now at all secondary schools for this coming year. We also, again, included all of that data in your board notes. And as staff return, we have a few metrics that we haven't been able to finalize yet. We'll have those for you before we present our 2024-2025 plan next month. What questions can I answer for you?
Yeah, so as you do that presentation, then the one piece that was missing from board notes, and I think it's a timing thing, it'll be coming, would be just a comparison to the last couple years as well, and where did we come in last year? So,
Sure.
So that progression, so we can actually compare year over year numbers. Just
Yes, we had some staff who held all of the knowledge and they just
Right.
weren't with
I
us yet.
totally
So,
understand. So
definitely
looking
we'll make
forward
sure
to
that that's the case.
So, thanks.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Trustee Bierke?
So on that slide that you just showed us, the plan components results, so
Yes,
each
ma'am.
category, does that apply K-12? Who are the student achievement growth metrics? Is that for the entire district?
Correct. So I don't have the plan queued up for you, but you would notice that they're in blocks. So there was a literacy block and a numeracy block and a growth block. So that is aggregating all of those together.
Okay.
Certainly, there are some metrics that we saw that we absolutely need to focus on, and we're going to be addressing it with our building admin comeback. One of those was in the transition years. You may remember we didn't see as high of growth in grades 5 through 6 and 8 through 9. So that's going to be a focus for us coming up this next year.
Okay, thank you.
Material? Good workshop material, maybe?
Yeah.
For the continuous improvement
Yeah.
plan?
Go ahead.
I'd like to sit down and go through those metrics by like elementary, middle, high school, comparatively
Okay,
together if we could.
great. Like in a different format than we have the last couple of
Yes.
years?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's see what we can do
Maybe
about that
discuss
as far as
How we want to see those.
workshop. There might be some timing stuff as far as,
October 1st is
When?
the statewide deadline as to when it has to
which
be
is the problem
posted.
we always run into, you know, and that kind of thing. So let's just see what we can do as far as calendaring, something like that.
We're committed to making sure that achievement is part of your ongoing conversation. So any metrics that we can provide at any time, we're more than glad to do so.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. So
you.
let's work. Is that enough, Ms. Southwick? Yeah, yeah, we're just thinking as far as just how then to get the SIP done at the same time kind of thing. So, yeah, great, we'll work on that.
Anything additional?
So, anything else?
Thank you very much.
All right, great, thanks, Dr. Nelson. Terrific. Next up, we have our consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I can move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, tonight's consent agenda is approved. We've got then a number of first reading items here this evening and then a few second item read-ins. As far as policies go, there is a couple that we might, that are changes as far as what the law has changed and that type of thing. So we'll kind of look at these individually to start with. We're going to look up first at policy 1140, which is vacancies. And this is one that has come from the state. Dr. Hawker, anything you want to explain about this or point out?
Thanks, Chair Smith. I think you said it well. In fact, I believe every one of those 6 policies that are presented tonight under first reading are all state-required updates to new laws that went into effect July 1. So you do have the option to potentially approve those as a first and final reading tonight, or you can take them out for public comment and bring them back, and vote on them next month. If there's any significant changes you might like to make to them outside of what the state school boards is recommending, we would need to vet those with your school attorney, school district attorney. But this first policy, 1140, has to do with vacancies. This has to do with, I think, probably Bonner School District and a recall, and trying to work through those challenges. And I think several of these policies will have a little bit of overlap there, but this talks about your ability, if you were ever to be recalled, what you could vote on up until it's certified by the county and so forth. So that's the first required update from House Bill 645.
Terrific. We could talk through briefly each of these, and then, we can either approve to to go forward. Ms. Southwick, you had a concern, especially with policy 1500 and just some work that needs to get done. Is that correct? Instead of putting it out for public comment. 4105, the public participation. Okay.
That's the one I'd like to have discussion about
Yeah,
too, before
for
we
sure.
go any farther on that.
Okay. Well, let's just decide here then individually on each of these as we go forward. So for policy 1140, we can approve it as presented. It's a state law, we have to do it anyways, or we can push it back out for public comment and then approve it next month. But it
I
doesn't
think just
impact
because
your
it's our
work.
practice to push policy out to
Okay.
public review first, I think that would be the best.
Great. Do you want to make a motion then for that? It's as it's printed there, maybe.
I move to accept the required revisions to policy, sorry, I gotta go back up to the right one. To policy 1140, vacancies, and advance it to the public comment period.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll move that one ahead. The next one's policy 1500. Dr. Hawker, do you want to explain this one as well? This is,
Yes, this is another update that would say that a quorum of the board is simply those board members that remain and a majority of those that remain. So that is also an update to by state law.
great. Great, is there a motion or questions or anything on this one? All right, okay.
I move to accept the required revisions to policy 1500, board meetings, and advance it to the public comment period.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is the procedures that would come along. Dr. Hawker, do you want to?
Yep, same scenario. As this gets a little wonky, because remember, generally speaking, we don't present procedures to the board for approval. However, this one has to do with you and how you do your work and how you do your operating procedures. So we want this to be your, approved by you and your approved procedure. So we have Marianne has updated that policy as recommended, or that procedure, excuse me, as recommended by the State School Boards Association, and she has redlined those changes that are in that procedure, and they are there for your review.
Great. Is there any additional questions on any of those procedures? All right, so even though it's a procedure, do we still desire public comment on this procedure?
That's up to you again, as well. This is,
We don't put the procedures necessarily out for public comment.
Yeah, I just kind of hate to put the cart before the horse. If we're going to put the policy out for public review, we might as well wait on the procedure.
Is there any reason why we need,
Nope.
remind me, is there?
nope, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, so we can just push this
Can we
and
just
table it
Table
then?
it for now?
Do we have to make a motion to do that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and, that's fine.
I would make a motion to table the required revisions to policy or procedure 1500P, board meeting procedures, and address it at a later date.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. Policy 2500 regards library materials. Any additional, Dr. Hawker, anything you want to point out or anything that anyone wants to point out on that?
Again, Dr. Nelson spent a fair amount of time with Katie on working through this specific policy as well, but this is all, you can see kind of the red lines there that what the state law primarily updated in this is that it affects more than just what I will call your general libraries in your schools. It also affects any groups of books that might be like a library in a classroom. And we know that we have several elementary specifically over the years of small little classroom, book selections. So this helps this helps clear up those policies and procedures and those books as well. Anything else, Dr. Nelson or Katie, that we want to add to that?
Dr. Hawker, Chair Smith, members of the board, yes, the required updates ultimately identify obscenity per state statute, as well as where and at what type of procedure should be in place should a challenge of a particular text occur. So those are the edits that you will see in your updates.
Perfect, thank you. Is any further questions or comments on this one? All right, well then we can go ahead and push it out then.
Okay, I move to accept the required revisions to policy 2500, library materials, and advance it to the public comment period.
I'll second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll move that out as well. All right, the next policy is policy 2530, learning materials review and reconsideration. And yeah, Dr. Hawker, just is there anything or any questions that anyone has on that?
No, I think this one just basically is tying in the new state statute in this, correct? And defining what's
I like that the-
harmful to minors and specifically spelling that out.
Nice to have it defined. I would move to accept the required revisions to policy 2530, learning materials review and reconsideration, and advance it to the public comment period.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then the next one is public participation in board meetings. And this actually, this required update changes our policy and our standing as it's been held for a long time, actually. And so, so it is pretty significant. And this, I do especially want, I mean, all of us, I think, want it pushed out in general for comment, but especially just for an awareness piece because it changes what we do in our practice so much. And so,
I would like to find out from legal as well. There's one section in the subsection, one sentence that makes me question whether we have a little more leeway there than what it's,
in what section, where?
you have it printed out, I wrote it down. Anyway, the sentence is, nothing in this, it says first, public comment shall be limited to items listed on the meeting agenda. Then the next sentence says, nothing in this subsection restricts a board of trustees from establishing reasonable standards for the public comment period of the meeting, including time limits and conduct standards. So I'm wondering if they're concerning conduct standards, if that can include what they're able to address.
And so what we're looking at here is, just so I can clarify it, just for the public, is
That's the statute.
That's the statute. Dr. Hawker.
Yeah, I let me make sure I understand the question right, Allie. So the question has to do with the conduct of the patron addressing the board and whether the conduct
Can include what they're addressing, right?
can include the topic.
Yes.
Yeah, we certainly can ask legal that question. I think the conduct has to do with behavior. I think the
Typically.
topic is the topic, and I think the biggest piece of that as well is that, back to my example earlier with procedure, we've taken a procedure and want to push it into your policy also, so that it's all yours, so that you guys can drive that and make those changes. Since they're now required by state law. Our initial policy was pretty brief with a pretty detailed procedure, and now with the new state law requirements and the recommendation or the required policy, quite frankly, from School Boards Association, made that make sense to eliminate the procedure that we had and put it all into policy. So yes, I think that's probably our biggest change and our biggest piece, I guess, of this specific policy is just that. So I think it's very good to make sure we're very comfortable with it. We did ask Megan a few questions specifically about this to make sure we were good, because I felt like there was a couple, and I'm trying to just remember, and Marianne might help me here, but I felt like there was something written that little later contradicted itself a little bit. But Megan explained to me how the legal system specifically interprets that, and then it made much more sense. So I didn't end up highlighting that, and I didn't bring that specific note with me off my desk. And I'm not sure if Marianne, if you remember what that topic was, but yes, we can do whatever you would like to that. I think as far as conduct goes, I believe conduct is more defined by behavior and not topic. And so the topic would need to be focused on the agenda. I think we would have, we currently have a community sign-up sheet back there. We would just figure out what would work for you guys to have maybe another column as well that would address the specific topic. And I think for us, what I would really like to make sure we do is that we really promote the other avenues for folks to make sure that you're getting information. Because we don't want to, there's no intent in any of this, I believe, from our legislature to ever inhibit that. So I think, again, just making sure our community knows that you all read every email that comes across. You all, I think we can be very strategic on other avenues. And of course, anytime anybody wants to ever send anything to the clerk, or obviously they can email the whole group through our webpage. But if there's anything specific to maybe one trustee that they want to send to or whatever, we just want to make sure that they know how to specifically do that. But then the topics, they would just sign up and say, all right, I want to talk on topic 5A that you're going to talk on, later on. It's required. And so I think it's another practice change that we'll have to make too, because there have been, on rare occasion, but there are times where we may have to have another board meeting outside of this board meeting to have another action item addressed. And oftentimes we've done that at a workshop, but oftentimes at a workshop, we rarely take community input at a workshop. And with this change, we can no longer do that. If we're going to have an action item at a workshop that's going to be voted upon by the trustees, we have to have a section early or before that vote allowing public comment. So I think that's a good thing, and that will help you. We would be able to potentially spread things out in a different manner from time to time if need be.
So I think we've had this conversation before and kind of discussed in the past, limiting comments to agenda items, and I realize that is partially what's in the state statute. I personally don't like it. I feel like most of the people that come and speak at our meetings usually stick to that, but once in a while, someone needs to come and share, and they don't necessarily want to share it through an email. And it's not like they can pick up the phone and call us. I mean, I guess they could if they asked for our number. So I'm always a little leery. If that is the law we have to follow, then I think that I might contact some of my state legislators and see if we can tweak that so we have the freedom to allow that. And like I said, most of the people that come are always so respectful. It's never an issue of conduct. But I don't like to limit things just to agenda items, because sometimes stuff comes up and they may not have the 7 days in advance to contact you to see if we can get it on the agenda. So I just want to.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, and I think you have the connections to make that conversation happen as well.
My best.
Yes, I obviously, just from a legal perspective, I can't make a recommendation to not support something that the law has said we need to have. It's a required policy that you will do this. And I do think there are some good things specifically in this change that will help our community and help each of you as well. So, but I do completely understand that as well, and I think that can just maybe open some doors for us to also make sure that our community, that we have things on agenda items that people want to address and discuss, and have workshops and have forums and have other avenues for people to make sure that there is not a feel of any sort of severance of communication to the trustees.
I totally agree with Trustee Burek. It's because a lot of organizations, entities already have this practice, and I've always kind of been proud of the Coeur d'Alene School District because I think they have the most transparent avenue, honestly, out there. And that's not to slam other folks that practice it any differently, but that one definitely, the spirit of it, I can appreciate the efficiency, but I guess my gut is to make it easier and not harder. So we'll dig into it some more.
I'd have to say I echo what both of you said, and I think it may have been an unintended consequence of them trying to get other things through. But I also think that it would be great for us to really reiterate to the public that they do have that option to be able to get things on the agenda if they want to address something, so that they can come and speak to it at a meeting.
I just want to say too, I think there's, from time to time, we have all witnessed that there are unintended consequences through some legislative actions. And I think this is probably a perfect example of that. I think the same scenario with the removal of our lottery funding that has kind of hit us hard and not allow us to use some additional funds in place of that. I do think, as Mr. Herringer shared with you, I think that was an unintended consequence. I don't think they planned on that, but unfortunately it is what it is today. So we'll continue to work through that.
Great. Thanks. So we're going to push this to Megan for another look based on those questions. Is that?
I can get clarification. My recommendation would be to still push this out with the rest of them for, you don't need to approve anything, today anyway, but get the clock started and get it moved. And then I will get clarification from Megan in regards to that conduct and whether that has a behavior content or a topic content, and see what her perspective is on that. And I'll share that out with you as soon as I can get that information, at least in a board note, so it's public information.
Thank you.
A Friday board note, right? Your Friday notes that are public.
Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and look at policy 2700 P1, high school graduation requirements. There was 2 public comments that.
Wait,
do we need to do a motion on that, even if we're going to
Are we going to move it out?
push it? I mean, we're just.
I think are we going to put it out to public comment?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. In my
And
head,
just
I was
won't
like,
be
yeah.
approving anything until we hear back from legal and
Yes.
public.
That's right. On all of these, you'll be able to get public comment back, and then you can digest that public comment before you would ever vote on anything later.
Good. Is there a motion then?
I move to accept the required revisions to policy 4105, public participation in board meetings, and advance it to public comment, period.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll push that out as well. Let's go on then to policy 2700 P1, high school graduation requirements. There was 2 public comments on this, and this was to look at the removal of the technology requirement. Trustees, any further questions or anything? The public comments I thought were interesting, and I appreciated those. Here, I'm trying to pull them back up.
So I did think they were interesting, and they did bring up some good points, and I don't know, Katie, maybe you want to speak to this about, although I think basically they were saying that there are still specific things, technologically speaking, that they want addressed on, decor, or not decor, but decorum, and I'm trying to find it real quick, but anyways, certain things that they feel maybe wouldn't be addressed if we just remove that out. So I thought that was a valid critique of that. Is there a way that we can make sure some of the specifics, and this came, I believe, from a teacher, so let me see.
Yes, there were 2 comments
Yeah, so
from
both from teachers, I think.
parents who are also patrons, who are also teachers in another district, and they had some understandable concerns. They talked about the importance of computer science being crucial in today's world. They talked about making sure that we're safe in recognizing disinformation and scams. They talked about differentiation, and they talked about practical skills and the importance of it. And while we do recognize these concerns, when we looked at each of the standards that is required for technology, we found that they are more than being met through multiple courses in our district. So, for example, avoiding disinformation and scams. I was just talking with a patron this evening who asked me if we had a media literacy course specifically, and we integrate that into our ELA courses so that students who are writing research papers, for example, learn about how to recognize information that is biased or that is valid, that is true, how to weigh it against other information and sources. And that's part of the research process. And developing those skills also helps students recognize disinformation or scams as well. So I think there are a variety of ways that we are addressing many of these needs. And that being said, we do recognize that these are valid needs that our kids have. They need to learn these things, and it's just that we're saying they're learning them through a variety of courses rather than just one specific high school course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustees, any further discussion on this, or is there?
I think that was, both comments were kind of made you stop in your tracks a little bit and just want to reevaluate it. But I just think if there's a concerted effort in other avenues, just to make sure that we're not, again, we talk about unintended consequences, right? So I guess you just got to make sure that some of these efforts are bolstered in other classes, then it's probably worth rolling the dice
One of the
on.
other things that were brought up was AI, and that's definitely something our kids are going to have to be, and together, I mean, that's a whole new world for me.
Absolutely. And frankly, Vice Chair Bierke, I think we're all, as an educational community, every teacher is needing to kind of reconcile with AI and its potential as well as its downfalls. And I know that Seth Deniston has had started some training around that with some of the tech folks, and I know that some other people as well in our district have been working on how do we integrate AI. So I think you're absolutely right. That's going to need to be a huge conversation moving forward for everybody.
Well, I think the integration, but also the dangers of it. And in terms of the misinformation and disinformation, that's in the eye of the beholder. So again, like learning how to not bias that on your own personal opinion, because there's good stuff out there and then there's bad stuff out there. So,
Yeah.
While technology certainly has a place and can be a valuable tool, there's a lot of dangers for it, especially when it comes to our kids.
And I just want to, if Seth or Mr. Derek would like to speak to this at all, I don't know if.
And maybe my question really quick for Mr. Derek would be just off of this, knowing that we're making this change, is how soon do we need to come up with a district policy regarding AI? Because right now we don't necessarily have one, and so that would be something this year, that's going to be helpful.
Yeah. No,
Instead of individual.
Yeah, Chair Smith, first of all, just to back up a little bit on the policy and the public comment on that, and appreciate the comments on that, and just to understand a little bit about the context of the request as well, is we really felt like as we looked at the standards, we were integrating those standards in a lot of other courses, which allowed then our students to have a little more flexibility in order to take maybe another course that might be more beneficial to their career pathway. So I hope we can, move forward with that particular change. AI is, it's new and it's changing. I know I'm planning on going to a conference later in September to learn a little bit more about it as well. As far as anticipating a policy, I know statewide this is a big topic as well. I would anticipate even the State Board of Education perhaps putting something out in this next year. But I do know that we're going to be wrestling with it, in the coming months for sure. Through the State Board of Education.
Sorry for the telephone game. We are also, we just received a policy update from the Idaho School Boards Association, which would address plagiarism also and address artificial intelligence within that policy as well. That is something that our English teachers certainly would like to be able to have some more support on, but that is forthcoming.
Terrific. Trustees, to bring us back here to this policy here, is there any further discussion on that or a motion at all to move forward?
I'll make a motion to accept revisions to procedure 2700 P.1 high school graduation requirements as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we'll move forward with that. Thank you. Thank you all. Policy 3510 was about medications at school, and this was an update. Is there any further questions, trustees, on this? So it's straightforward. So is there a motion?
I move to accept revisions to policy 3510, medication at school, as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Medications at school then is taken care of right now. Thank you for that. We're going to go on to a potential action item, which would be a classified employee pay increase. So,
Thank you, Chair Smith, Dr. Hawker, members of the board. I'm Seth Denniston, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, pinch hitting for Eric Davis, our Director of HR, who's out sick today. As you discussed at your 624 workshop, we're bringing back to you the 3% classified pay increase for our classified employees. So what this would look like, the salary schedules in your packet, it would basically mean that each of our hourly and other classified employees would just move down a step, which is equal to 3%.
great. Trustees, are there any questions? We discussed this at our workshop. Questions, comments? Thank you for your work on that. Is there a motion?
I would, but I lost where I was at.
There's not a printed motion, so it would just be in that memo.
In the first.
No.
Yeah, it says it's the recommendation of the district administration. We give classified employees of the district salary schedule a step increase, which is equivalent to a 3% increase in hourly compensation, and for classified exempt personnel, a 3% increase on their annual pay. That would be the recommendation.
So I guess if we move to follow the recommendation.
Correct. If you say so moved, we will
So
print that
moved.
right in there, just like that.
3% raise or step increase.
It's exactly what Eric wrote in there. Yeah.
All right, just to clarify, are you making the motion then?
Yes, I'm making the motion to
Okay,
approve the recommendation made by Eric Davis.
great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so that is approved for our classified personnel. Terrific, thanks. Tonight, then, we can, before us is a potential levy resolution kind of discussion. I would point out that Trustee Tenbrink is not here, and I'm curious about postponing. maybe an official discussion on this. I just feel like our levy resolution work is one of the key works that we do, you know, as far as making budgets and that kind of thing. And so, in timeline, we still have a little bit of time before we have to officially do that. And so without a full board, we don't do that often, but we have done it for a couple of key items. So, which isn't to say we can't have a discussion about it. Trustee McAndrew,
No, I'm totally fine with that. I mean, it's a team effort.
Especially
and I
going
think having all
into-
5 of us, I mean, I don't know that it's going to change anything, but I like in the spirit of, you know, she's a smart cookie. So in that regard, I don't think it'd hurt anybody by holding off. What's the downside?
Simply, the downside is really none other than another meeting for you.
What data will we have?
We have
won't
nothing.
Okay.
We have the small little presentation that is part of your board packet tonight that we were just going to basically just give you a high level review of your workshop in June, and then present you with one of you have 2 resolution options, both with the same heading, one for the flat 25 million, one for 25.750. So. Just need to have this approved by a certain date in September, and it's before your September board meeting, the 6th. So because of Labor Day weekend and that Monday holiday and stuff, it's just kind of in my mind. I had just said let's try to have this approved by the end of August at the latest. So, but we can certainly, if the board wishes, we can look and try to come up with another date, and we can have a special meeting on that time with just pretty much this topic, and do it at that time.
When do we need that by, the 6th? If we had a meeting on the 6th, could we get it there in time? No, okay, well, because I was looking, if we don't need our emergency levy, we could just sub that in. Not that easy. Okay, well, I was trying to go for efficiency. I was trying to be efficient.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Shannon is over there saying heartburn. So
Usually, no thanks. Yeah.
It was just a suggestion.
Dr. Hucker, was there anything additional you wanted, or Shannon, that you wanted to review or point out, that maybe you want to draw attention to from our workshop again, or that you want us to consider?
Yeah, so what we have, just in the packet for some housekeeping, we have the 2 draft resolutions, so you can review that. And then last go around with the election, some legislation changed where it required school districts to disclose all the levy uses on the ballot. So we are going to review that really quick, but we can review it at our next meeting. None of the topics have changed on that, but we have updated language to make it, a little more user friendly, as well as some amounts, as we've done some pretty heavy budget work these past couple of years. We've really identified what is state versus what is levy, really identifying, okay, if we didn't have our levy, what would we have to minimally legally keep? So we've been really intentional with that, as well as smarter school spending and our other budget reductions on fine-tuning positions and amounts. So some amounts have changed, but for the most part, it's the same ballot language. We can go into kind of some tax figures if you'd like. Jimmy, you asked Eric about kind of how we relate with our tax rate versus like the schools with comparable enrollment. And we have that in the presentation if you're curious, but we can also hold off till the next meeting.
Are you ready to?
Yeah, we
present
can
that now?
definitely
Let's
present.
go
Yeah,
ahead
and
can we go
I'll
ahead
do
and
it
that way?
quick because we'll want to present again with Heather, if I assume, but
And I think she'll be able to watch this. even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go from there.
okay. Well, I'm actually going to first start off with Dr. Hawker. So.
Great.
well, mine's one quick slide right there, just summarizing your June workshop where we went through both these options. We shared with you a $25 million levy and a $25.75 million levy. And the difference of that is simply the inflation component, and recognizing that that's about $750,000, each of those years. So $1.5 million So without the increase, we will definitely, the board will have to make some decisions on additional, reductions to $750,000 or so each year for those 2-year period of times. And this is all based upon our estimations that our enrollment, remains flat and based on the numbers that we have specifically shared with you, today. I think that we can, we heard from Eric's presentation as well, we can only publish on our ballot language knowns. We can't guess and say, well, this is what we think things might be. So I think it's just very important that we are speaking on specific, details and what that meant. And as we shared with you in the June workshop, the extra $750,000, if that's the board's wishes, that is estimated to be approximately $12 a year. That would be an average homeowner in Coeur d'Alene's increase if everything else stayed the same. Now, again, I don't know. We can't say in a public or in a ballot language that it's going to be down for all these other reasons, but we certainly can estimate that. And I think unless we think our community is going to shrink, there's growth still happening, and so I think it's a very good conservative approach, and I feel comfortable that it'll be even less than that at the end of the result, but that'll be a year down the road. So with that, Shannon, let's move to second slide.
Okay, so through our budget workshops, we know that our levy is a big budget. It's about 26% of all our operations. Oh, sorry. So we know through I have to restate what I just said, but through our budget workshops, we know that our levy is a little more than 25%. It covers about 25% of all our operations. We have to call it the supplemental levy because that's the law, but we know it's necessary and fundamental to continue our current operations. Based off of required ballot language, we need to disclose what our levy funds. So last go around in March 2023, we disclosed what our levy funds, and for this ballot coming forward, we're presenting the same things. We've updated a little bit of the language and some of the amounts based off of our work in identifying really what is legally required that we would have to maintain versus what we would have to reduce if we didn't have that levy. Our levy really funds more than 200 positions as we've gone through what the state funds versus what the levy funds. It not only funds more positions than the state does, it also allows us to provide those competitive wages where, we can't beat Washington, but we can try to get, a better wage for North Idaho and good medical. So we've listed in the ballot what the levy pays for. Just really quick, the levy does pay for all sports and extracurriculars. It pays for school safety and security, so our SROs, our campus security, our SSAs. The levy pays for our nurses and our mental health department. Our levy pays for a huge portion of our curriculum and our building budgets, and our building budgets goes towards teacher salaries, teacher supplies. So all the things that a school needs to operate. The levy funds a huge portion of all of our enrichment classes, our electives, our K-Tech, college career technical courses, advanced placement. Those positions, those teaching positions, that we have more teaching positions than what the state funds. So that's really a lot of those elective classes. It pays for a good portion of our technology, knowing that we still would need technology staff and devices without the levy. So we've been very intentional of, what the levy pays for versus what we would have to keep operating. School operating expenses, it pays for, a good portion utilities at certain sites. It pays for maintenance, custodial, grants, transportation that the state cannot cover. Especially with the reduction in lottery funding, it's even more important. And then the biggest ticket line item on our levy uses is the levy pays for teacher and support staff jobs above what the state pays for. So the state only partially funds school districts, and our levy covers positions that are not funded by the state, as well as salaries. The state's average salary is much, much lower than what we pay. So the levy helps provide those livable wages. So all those items together are $25 million of our budget. With the $25,750,000 option, really that is to address inflation. We know that our average increase to our medical has been around 7%. So this upcoming year, it's about $1 million increase. So if our average medical increase is at 7% on an ongoing basis, that's more even than what we would ask with that 3% increase of $750,000. If we didn't go with that route and kept with $25 million, that just means we would need to continue our budget reductions if the state does not increase their side of the revenue. So those are things that we will have to consider as we go through the fiscal years. Any questions on our levy use language? Okay. Eric provided some great stats on our tax rates, but just another illustration of CDA's historical levy tax rate. So for this next year, tax year 2024, fiscal year 2025, we don't have those final assessed values yet. But I have used what our supplemental levy rate would be without any tax relief, and with and then keeping with the 2023 assessed value. Based off of Eric's presentation, we know we're going to get a pretty large portion of tax relief money. We really won't have to bond or levy for our bonds, and we will have enough to reduce our supplemental levy for next year. We just don't have those amounts, but we can confidently say it's not going to exceed that 93 cents per thousand for next year. And then for the ballot language, we unfortunately have to continue using that 2023 tax year assessed value. And then we cannot refer to any of that property tax relief money in our ballot language because it's not guaranteed, and we won't know next year's as well. Jimmy, this one's for you. So here's a graph of for this past fiscal year, so the 2023 tax year, of the 19 largest districts in Idaho. 19 is an odd number. I would have chosen 20, but Oneida is in there. Their enrollment is comparable, or it's within the top 20, but it's all virtual, and that's why I did not choose them. You'll see that Coeur d'Alene ranks on the lower end of the property tax rate per thousand. So you can just see through there who's got the biggest tax rates.
I have a question going back. You said for this levy, they're going to use the 2023 property values. Did you say
On
that?
our ballot, it has
Right.
yeah.
But since this will be a 2025 ballot, will that be updated with the?
It won't be updated for the November election, unfortunately.
But once it passes, or whatever, let's say if it passes, will they use the current property evaluations, or will they always use the
Oh, yes,
2020?
absolutely. The actual taxpayer rate is always determined based off of what that
So they're
tax year
just
will be.
using 2023 for this ballot.
Yep.
But when it comes time in 2025 for this levy,
Mm-hmm.
they will use the actuals.
Yep.
Got it.
So that's where we rank kind of on the largest districts. All right. And so to give you kind of what an average homeowner would pay with these levies, these drafted levies. So with a $25 million levy, we're expected to not have an increase in the tax rate, keeping with that $25 million. Remember, it's a replacement levy. So as this current levy drops off at the end of June, it would be replaced with a $25 million. No expected increase to the taxpayer on that. That is, of course, assuming that the assessed values at least stay the same and not reduce. And if it increases, of course, the tax rate would reduce. It's also assuming no property tax relief. Eric Herringer, he did show that it would be significantly lower with property tax relief. So in your drafted ballot language with that $25 million option and in the question to the taxpayer, it will show them that there will be no expected increase. With a $25.75 million option, using an average house's value, we would expect to see about an $11 increase to that yearly tax bill. It increases by about 3 cents per thousand. So that is that impact on increasing to $750,000. And that is it.
Thank you, Shannon. Any further questions or anything? Are we good? Okay. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Additional information then this evening, and so we'll work our way through this. The first is policy 1500E, just board meeting protocols, and this was actually tied to that earlier policy that we're tabling right now, and so should we just table this? It's information, so we don't even need yeah. So as far as that goes, we can table that until that other policy comes back to us. New is 2500F, which is just the form that goes with how to check out library materials. Dr. Hawker, is there anything we should know or questions, trustees, about this?
None, unless there's any questions.
Yep, it's for restricted books and the form that goes along with that. There's some additional information there on information for harmful to minors. Dr. Hawker, is there anything you'd like us to know?
And no. Again, really, this is just all additional information. Yep, ties to policy 2530 above, and this would be the form that we will use with that policy.
Terrific. Then D is the same thing, so technology requirements there. 2700F, which is early grad application, and then our annual review of policy is just the system for that there. Was there any questions?
Chair Smith, if I may interject. Again, just as a reminder, those were all placed for board additional information in the event you chose to approve those policies above in one reading tonight. We wanted to present you specifically those forms. Those forms won't go into effect and won't be used until you do approve that policy. So it's just right now information, and then I think to be clear, we'll bring it back as information again next month when we bring back those policies so that you can decide what you'd like to do with those policies.
Terrific, thanks. Some information there on contracted services as well. So, and then we're looking at our future dates there. We've got an upcoming training and retreat coming up on August 28th for us, kind of our annual kickoff to the year as a board. And so that's listed there on the 28th. So go ahead.
Chair Smith, could I interject? There could be a potential option on that date. We will confirm tomorrow when that board special training might start, but we had blocked out noon. And today, I believe that the trainer that's coming in can't start until about 2. It's a possibility if you already had that day blocked on your calendar. It is pretty late in the game, but if you would like to move your levy resolution action item to noon that day, you could have from about 12 to 1 here, perhaps in a formal meeting, take action, allow public comment on that meeting since it's an action item. So it might be a little risky if we didn't wrap it up within an hour and a half, but then that would give you half an hour to transition to the board workshop that we'll have the rest of that afternoon.
I thought that was the day we couldn't do that. We're good on that, the 6th?
No,
No,
that's not the
that's the
6th, that's the
28th.
August
Oh, do
28th.
both.
The 28th, we could
Okay.
potentially tie that together there.
Yeah, so you basically, you would have 2 official meetings that day.
Sorry.
It's an option, or you schedule, or we'll reach out to you and put something else in front of you for a potential between now and the 28th.
Get her done.
August 30th, on Friday of Labor Day weekend, probably not.
No, I can't be there for that, actually. There's 3 more meetings there, all just scheduled September 6th, which is a potential special board meeting that we always just keep on the books in case we need it regarding our emergency levy if we need to take it. Last few years, we've canceled that. So September 9th then is our next special board meeting, and then our next board workshop is on the 23rd. So terrific. All right, I believe that's it for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, thanks, everyone. Thanks.